You are Locked On Wolves Postcast, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
23 turnovers, and the Wolves lose by 2, 128-126. That's your final tonight in Game 4. Wolves now with their back against the wall, down 3-1 to OKC. What's going on back in the lab? Back at it. Another T-Wolves Postcast episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Your team every day. Jack Borman with me as always. Give him a follow on X at Jared Borman 13. Jack, if the Wolves do in fact lose this series, that's the game. That's the game when you're sitting at home come, middle of August, you look back and say, had to have it. That's the one we needed to win. That's the one we want back the most. 23 turnovers, 19 offensive rebounds allowed. That's going to be the A topic. How in the world do you rally back now when you got to win 3 straight games against the best team in the NBA?
Yeah. I want to start off by saying I don't think that this series is over quite yet. And the reason why I'm willing to go there is because of, some of the things that we'll talk about. I mean, if you would have told me that the Timberwolves would get a combined 66 points from Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Dante DiVincenzo, score 55 points either off turnovers or second chances, score 64 bench points, shoot 18 of 41 from 3, 44%, take 7 more free throws than the Thunder, score more points in the paint, more fast break points, and lose, I probably would have gone and jumped in the river. But I do think that winning all those little individual battles really does matter. And this game just came down to the star power at the end of it. But I think for the Wolves, there's so much to control for them that they just couldn't. I mean, it's just so hard to win a basketball game when you give up 19 offensive rebounds and you turn it over 23 times. The Timberwolves turned it over on 25% of their offensive possessions, and Oklahoma City generated a second chance on 20% of their offensive possessions. So when you have a team's, second chance percentage, right there with your offensive turnover percentage, and they're both north of 20, you're going to be in some trouble. And you combine that with just the fact that the Wolves played so many amazing defensive possessions and just couldn't close them out with rebounds or the committed fouls or whatever the case may be right at the end of the shot clock, I think just drove everybody in the building a little bit insane. But I think that was one of the best basketball games I've ever seen. I think it was a little anticlimactic that it ended in the free throw game. But look, Mark Daigneault is a foul up 3 guy, and we saw it bite him in the Denver series, but they executed everything very well tonight. And you got to give Oklahoma City quite a lot of credit for the way that, Jalen Williams specifically just made him and SGA in the fourth quarter just felt like they made every single big shot when the Thunder needed one. And then when they missed, it felt like the Thunder were there with an offensive rebound. So just a huge kick in the stomach if you're a Timberwolves fan, but I don't think anybody on this Timberwolves team doesn't think that they can't go get a win in Game 5. And then if that happens, we'll go from there.
Lots to get into. Biggest turning point for the Wolves tonight. Huge preview of Game 5. Plus, if that was Nickeil Alexander-Walker's last game at the Target Center as a Wolf, what will we remember the most? But first, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Monarch Money. Monarch Money, take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, so again, gut punch time, right? 23 turnover. You're never going to beat a team like OKC when you give up 23 turnovers, give up 19 offensive rebounds. And I say that, and they still only lost by 2. So to your point, what an absolute effort by the Wolves to still be in this game. You text me at halftime, feels like we should be down 25 points, and that was at halftime. The fact that they even had a chance at the end makes this one almost more tough to swallow, because that maybe they can just steal this one, tie the series back up, then go to OKC and let everything else play out. But not the case. And now, again, the difference between being tied up 2-2 versus down 3-1. I mean, that size is the size of Mount Everest. How we feeling kind of big picture, I guess? I know you touched on some of these things already, but big picture after the way they just battled through, and again, their chances at going to steal one in OKC and keeping this thing alive.
Yeah, I think you got. I mean, big picture. Obviously, this game was really tough for the Wolves to lose, but I think when you think about the fact that the Wolves bench players are playing with a ton of confidence right now, and the others, I guess, for the Wolves, if you want to throw in Mike Conley and Jaden McDaniels, who I thought were also pretty important, and Rudy Gobert, I thought was largely a positive for the Timberwolves in this game. I think when you think about all those things, it's those are reasons to I think have some confidence that the Wolves can go win one in Game 5. Yeah, I mean, and you look at in Game 1, the Timberwolves had, I think, one bench player with at least 9 points. In Game 2, they had 2. In Game 3, they had 3, and tonight they had 4. So I think the fact that you're getting marginally more each and every game from the others is super important, and hopefully you kind of lean on that, because Anthony Edwards looked absolutely exhausted in the fourth quarter tonight, which he has absolutely no excuse to be, because of the fact that, Timberwolves had some days off before this, and Oklahoma City has been playing every other day for the last 3 weeks. So they've certainly had less rest than he has. And it wasn't like Anthony Edwards did all that much with the ball in his hands tonight. And I think, so big picture, I think it's more just about trying to take it one game at a time. You obviously, it's Oklahoma City, I don't think, has lost 3 games in a row all year, so it would be a first for them. But I think if you're the Wolves, you just got to focus on some of the individual things you can clean up, and just try to go get one and take it one step at a time.
Talk to me about the offensive rebounds allowed. Talk to me about the turnovers. I feel like, again, the entire discussion about this one has to be about those 2 areas of the game that we all knew. I mean, you talked about it on the Game 4 preview 2 nights ago. We knew was so important, but that's obviously, the key to this whole thing, which you've explained to me a million times. It's so important because it limits your possessions and shot attempts, right? I think Jeff called it out earlier in the chat. And even though the Wolves were so efficient with their shots, erasing so many possessions and losing by 2 has just got to be the most frustrating thing to watch unfold tonight, was it not?
Yeah, no question about it, because I think, I was sitting next to, Kyle Teige and Jace Frederick and Dane Mizutani, and we were all just kind of saying, like, the Thunder offense just didn't feel as sustainable as what the Wolves were getting, just because the Wolves were, doing a great job of, moving the ball, getting it to the middle of the floor, spraying it out, creating a lot of wide open 3-point shot opportunities. And I thought getting some good looks at the rim as well, where it felt like Oklahoma City was, really more so playing one-on-one isolation basketball, forcing switches, and then just making really tough shots in the mid-range. And they definitely had their share of, really good offensive possessions, and we'll get into that. But it just felt like in the second half, especially, Oklahoma City's shot selection absolutely nosedived in that third quarter. And because of that, I think that the Wolves, were able to kind of even some of the, shot attempt battle that they had struggled with for the majority of the game. But look, I think at times too, what happened was, the Timberwolves rotated, I thought, really, really well, and contested shots really well. I just don't think they boxed out enough. Particularly Rudy Gobert and Anthony Edwards were absolutely awful in that category tonight. And then I think the Thunder also had some, moments where guys were cutting to certain spots on the floor, like when the guy who was shooting the ball was trying to decide, okay, am I going to shoot this or am I going to pass it? And then the ball just ended up dropping right where the guy cut to. So there was definitely some right place, right time mixed in with everything. And you got to give the Thunder credit, because every single time they got a break, whether it was coming up with a second chance that, kind of ping pong to them after a seemingly perfect Timberwolves defensive possession, whether it was, a kind of a grenade at the end of the shot clock, or a totally smothered shot attempt in the mid range, or a foul call that maybe, or any type of call that maybe went the Thunder's way that was questionable. They just took advantage of every single break. And I think that's a huge part of finding success consistently in the playoffs is not only playing really hard and making your own breaks like they do, but also taking advantage of them. And they certainly did that tonight. And, sometimes one or two of those breaks can make all the difference in a game like this. And it certainly felt like tonight was one of those where you could point at not just one or two, but 6, 7, 8, 9 breaks that the Thunder got that just, I think, kind of added to the weight of the loss. I think a lot of people walking out of the Target Center were more just really quiet than, just audibly frustrated. And I think everybody kind of understood what they just watched. And I didn't hear one Timberwolves player say anything, one Timberwolves coach say anything as they walked through the hallway in the back. I think it was just everybody kind of understood what just happened, and it's really tough to, I think, swallow a loss like that.
One more quick one before we move on to segment 2, superstar talk, right? SGA, Jalen Williams versus Ant Julius. If I would have told you you're going to tell me the exact number, feels like 50. If there'd be a 50-point disparity there, you'd say what? Like, what happened tonight for the superstars on the Minnesota Timberwolves?
Yeah, well, to start out with, Jalen Williams wanted to play in this game, and Julius Randle didn't. I didn't see 1 ounce of, I really want this from Julius Randle in this game tonight. I think when we look at how he approached this game, he just dribbled the air out of the basketball and didn't do anything productive with it in the first quarter. Had 3 of the Wolves' first 4 turnovers. Didn't really create very many open shots for his teammates or scoring opportunities for himself inside. Wasn't active on the glass really on either end. And then was consistently getting blown by on the defensive end of the floor. And he was kind of in no man's land. Like, he wasn't stepping up to take away mid-range shots, but he also wasn't in a stance ready to accept a driver that was coming at him. And when you're not doing either of those things, you can live potentially with a guy doing one of those things well. Like, if he's kind of in a stance expecting a guy to come at him and he gives up an open mid-range jump shot, like, okay. Or if he runs a guy really hard, out of a mid-range shot and then kind of leads him into another teammate, that's okay. But, he didn't do either one of those things. And I think Finch was absolutely in the right to bench him. I think he probably should have gotten benched earlier to try to get to some lineups with Jaden McDaniels at the 4 instead of Randall. But, that was part of it. You look at the Robins in this game. Jalen Williams outscored Julius Randle 34-5. Jalen Williams has unquestionably been better than Julius Randle has in this series. And then, when you look at the Alpha Dogs, 40-16, SGA over Ant. Ant took 1 shot attempt in the first 10 minutes of this game. We sat here and talked after the last game about how incredible of a tone Ant set in that last game. And you honestly forgot that he was on the court in the first 10 minutes of this game. And I think, there was certainly Ant just taking what the defense was giving him and kicking out and creating some open shots for his teammates. Like, I don't think Ant was doing anything necessarily that was, making it, putting the Wolves in a worse spot with his passiveness, I guess. But I think you'd just like to see him make an imprint on the game a little bit earlier. And I think the passiveness or Ant's lack of, really dominant downhill aggression, I think just shows a little bit more when, Randall isn't also there creating for himself and others in the early parts of games like he's shown the propensity to be able to do throughout these playoffs. So it was just a really tough to have, both those guys off at the same time. If you include Chet, they had 92 points from their kind of big 3, if you will. And the Timberwolves, main stars had 6 made shot attempts. They made 6 of their 20 shots. They had 10 turnovers. They had more turnovers than made shots in this game. And then they were 1 of 10 from 3. It's pretty tough.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
It's just good. The thing is, like, if you get anything from either one of those guys,
I know.
Anything at all,
I know.
The Wolves win this game because of how well the others played. And I think now for Julius Randle, this is his 2nd game in this series, having 6 or fewer points, which is just absolutely egregious. And then for Anthony Edwards, I don't think he can really escape any type of culpability either because, for someone who's been as good as he has, he's had games of 16 and 18 points. And when a lead dog in the NBA playoffs has games of 16 and 18 points, you're going to lose those 2 games almost every single time. So regardless of what position he's in and the weight that he's carrying, he's just got to give him more because SGA's given the Thunder more in 3 of these games.
Yeah, Ant didn't realize this coming into tonight. 41 career playoff games already. Time just flying for Ant. Averaging 27.5 points per game. And again, to your point, just can't can't not show up on the biggest stage like that. Again, to your point, bevy of reasons why. Obviously, we could talk about that all night, but you get anything from either of those guys, like you said, just echoing your thoughts. And T-Wolves tie this thing back up to a piece. Plenty more deep dive, biggest turning point, what we'll be talking about. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Monarch Money. You ever go check your bank account and go, where did all my money go? Dining out, online shopping, entertainment, so easy to lose track. Well, that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your own personal CFO. Monarch Money gives you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money, it is not just another budgeting app. Complete financial command center. Track your accounts, investments, spending, all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and instead you start building wealth. I know when I started using Monarch Money, I realized how much money I was spending on streaming services every month. Max, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Apple TV, you name it, I had it. But now I budget smarter. I save more than ever. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your entire first year. All right, Jack, let's get into the biggest turning point from tonight's game.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
Biggest turning point in this one. When was it and why? And this one, I don't know. I don't know which direction you're going to go. Obviously, this came down to technically the last possession, but when did things go too far south from your lens? You were there at the Target Center. Was it the last possession, given this thing came down to the wire, or was it prior to that, and why?
No. I mean, it was in the fourth quarter. It was when SGA kind of flopped, fell down on the ground with about 3.5 minutes left. The shot clock's at 3. It's a 4-point game at this point. He falls in the ground, rolls around. It doesn't get called a travel. There were several times in this game where a ball handler on the Thunder fell down, lost their dribble, and were not called for a travel. And SGA super smartly throws it out to Jalen Williams.
Just like rolled it out
Rudy
there.
Gobert's
Just
legs,
like
and Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams made what felt like one of his just like 7 or 8 just absolutely ginormous shots that I think took it up to 7 with 3.5 minutes left and just took all the air out of the building. I mean, he had 14 points in the fourth quarter. He and SGA combined for 25 of the team's 38 points in that fourth quarter. They just totally took complete control of things, and it just took all the air out of the building, like I said, and it just felt like no matter what the Wolves were going to try to do, everybody in the building just expected that Oklahoma City was going to be able to manufacture a few more points with their shot making, and that's exactly what happened. So you get, like I said, you got to give those two guys a lot of credit for the way that they were able to make shots down the stretch, and then for guys like Chet Holmgren and Alex Caruso, totally caught the Wolves napping a couple of times. Where there was play early in the fourth quarter where Thunder get an offensive rebound, Ant's ball watching, gives up a wide open dunk to Chet Holmgren after a cut. Ant also got beat backdoor twice by Alex Caruso for buckets in the fourth quarter. So I think when your star player is giving up more points than he's scoring or creating for his teammates, it's obviously a huge problem. And it was just unfortunate that persisted throughout the fourth quarter. I thought it was one of the worst defensive quarters he's played all year, and it just came at a really unfortunate time while Oklahoma City Stars were stepping up and in those pivotal moments.
Good segue. Two things I want to little bit deeper dive. Just the defensive talk. I know you got in your notes, played a little bit too heavy in the gas, a little bit too undisciplined. Also, there was some good sequences and possessions. I mean, I know people are going to say, what do you mean? They gave up 128 points tonight. What are you talking about? But OKC can put up 128 in their sleep, no problem. And then the other thing, part 2, Terrence Shannon Jr., the spark plug was alive and well again tonight. I just wish we got more of it, Jack.
Yeah, for sure. I think for the defense, like the Wolves were doing somewhat similar defensive alignment that they were in game 3. I think they played a little bit more zone with Rudy at the tip of a 3-2 zone tonight, just to have some more length on the perimeter. But I don't think the Wolves were quite as aggressive at the point of attack as they were in game 4 or in game 3, excuse me. Yeah, I think that they played drop coverage pretty straight for the majority of this game. Whereas in game 3, they played in pick and roll possessions. They held Oklahoma City to have it here, a 74.5 offensive rating and 55 possessions of pick and roll. On about 47% of them, they played straight drop coverage. And then on 53% of them, they played, they played a variety of, whether it was showing, hard hedging, trapping, blitzing, doubling, whatever the case may be. And so the way that they mixed it up was really good. And tonight they just didn't mix it up quite as much. And they had, a guy in the gaps, one pass away. And I just think that the Wolves are probably playing the numbers with Jalen Williams. I mean, Jalen Williams coming into tonight was shooting, I think, 26 or 25% from 3 in the postseason, and went 6 of 9 tonight. So you got to give him credit for kind of busting that type of coverage. But again, SGA just got too comfortable in this game. Even though he went 13 of 30, I think the Wolves would probably take that. There were just too many times where he got too deep into the paint in ways that he didn't in game 3. And they just didn't show quite as much of a crowd to him. I thought they did a better job of that in the first, half of the first quarter. He didn't score, I don't think, until like the 5 or 6 minute mark of the first quarter. And you saw guys like Lou Dort and Holmgren and Caruso and Isaiah Joe all taking 3-point shots, whether it be from the wing or the corners. And so, that was encouraging to me early on, that those were the types of shots that Oklahoma City was super willing to take. But again, like, the Timberwolves just gave Jalen Williams 2 wide open looks in the first 2 or 3 minutes of the game. And I think caught a real rhythm and just played with a ton of confidence. So again, I just think that Ant was probably playing the game plan of being heavy in the gaps and not necessarily, staying attached to Jalen Williams. And so I don't want to, dog him for that, because there's a very good chance that was the game plan. But even in one-on-one with Jalen Williams, I thought the Wolves didn't do a good enough job of trying to stay attached and not switch. I think they gave up some switches a little bit too easily than they did in game 3. And so that was certainly part of it. But I do think that there were some positives with the Wolves. I think defensively, they had so many good straight up one-on-one possessions in isolation. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, particularly on SGA, was really, really good. Kind of gave me shades of that play-in game from a few years ago, where the Wolves were just kind of smothering SGA and made it really, really tough on him. And then I also thought the Wolves rotated really, really well. So when one guy kind of had to stunt and guard 2 guys in the wing and in the corner, it did so in a way that prevented the guy in the slot from taking a 3, and then also prevented him from having a clean extra pass to the corner and kind of buy time for his teammates to rotate and prevent a shot. So I thought that was really strong. And I think, again, there's a lot to take away positively from the Wolves defense. But one thing that I also want to call out for Oklahoma City is there's no team in the league that is kind of more reliant upon playing at home. Reliant isn't the right word, but shoots better at home compared to on the road than OKC. I mean, Oklahoma City, so far in this postseason, is shooting. Is shooting 37% from 3 at home, and a lot of their guys, Caruso, Chet, Lou Dort, are all shooting better at home than they are on the road. They're shooting, coming into tonight, they're shooting just 27.5% on the road. So I think all of those guys just play with more confidence at home and probably just feel a little bit more freed up, probably similarly to how Nickeil and Dante feel playing at Target Center. So I think, again, if the Wolves play a similar strategy, I do think that they're going to have to, pick and choose their battles a little bit more in terms of either making doubles harder on SGA and forcing it out of his hands right away, or just staying attached and trying to trust Nickeil or Jaden or whomever it might be to kind of wall up SGA in single coverage. So if I were the Timberwolves, I would play defense almost exactly how they did tonight in terms of letting those guys shoot. And if they make shots, you shake their hand. But again, the number one priority has to be making SGA and Jalen Williams uncomfortable and trying to fight and prevent more of the switches up top and kind of hope for the best from there.
We talked about this all year long. One game really in the big scheme shouldn't mean that much of a difference, but we're talking about the Western Conference Finals. And, when you look at his past 2 games, maybe it does change things. Cat, Julius, the trade. Do you lean at all? Does this change things at all? I see some comments in the chat saying that, you know what, maybe this is the first time I've felt that. Maybe the Knicks did win that trade.
Have you guys watched the Knicks in the playoffs this year? I mean, like they've gotten absolutely torched defensively, and I think in many cases,
I think the reason in it is what Julius did the last 2 games versus Cat helped New York win this.
Okay, Cat played well last night and helped them win last night.
And
no
Julius
did
not.
About it when Jalen Brunson was in foul trouble for sure.
Yeah,
but
I mean, like you said, if Julius does anything tonight, the series is tied up 2-2.
Look, I just think it's a case of overreacting to one game. Okay, how Dante DiVincenzo play tonight was incredible tonight in this game. Just every single open shot they needed him to make felt like he made it. I don't think one. I don't think one game changes that by any stretch of the imagination.
What do you think? The other thing the chat's talking about. What do you think about Finch, the head coaching battle tonight? I know we don't touch on Finch a ton, but just in-game adjustments. OKC head coach versus the Minnesota head coach tonight. You lean one way for good or bad for the Wolves?
No, I don't necessarily think that Finch got outclassed or outcoached in a way that really draws attention to the two of them. I think that I thought that a really smart adjustment from Daignault was starting Alex Caruso over Isaiah Hartenstein in the second half and kind of playing smaller and flying around and setting more small to small screens so that the Wolves would switch those. And so that's kind of what I was getting into with Jalen Williams and SGA getting a little too comfortable. And so I think that that's probably part of the calculus there, and so he deserves some credit. But I don't really think the Thunder changed a whole lot of what they were doing. I think they went back to trying to get in the paint a little bit more than they have in the last couple of games. And again, I think it's just their defensive activity was really excellent, like it normally is, and they made some really tough shots and just kind of always stuck together. And I think it's probably just more of a testament to the culture that Daignault's built. And that's not a shot at Chris Finch at all. It's just complimenting him for how locked in together that group is and the way that they just don't necessarily flinch when the game got down to 3 or 2 or the Wolves tied it at 79. They just kind of said, all right, cool, let's go on a run of our own. And that's kind of what they did. And, credit to him for having his guys playing strong and together like that.
Yeah, 2 things can be true for sure. It's not a detriment to Finch just because another head coach is obviously really good at his craft as well. Couple minutes left. Number one thing on Jack's mind heading into Game 5. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode also brought to us by BetterHelp. Your schedule gets packed, right? Work projects, kids, whatever it may be. It's easy to let your priorities start to slip, even when we know what makes us happy. But when you feel like you got no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy, they become more important than ever. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, it's time to give BetterHelp a try, entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. So simple. All you got to do, fill out a brief questionnaire. You get matched up with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Go visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon. Getting 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Game 5 Wednesday, 7:30 tip, 4-game sample now, Jack. The last thing you want to do right now is head back to OKC where you look pretty lost in now what is going to be a win or go home matchup here in Game 5. But what's the number one thing you're thinking about right now, fresh off this Game 4 loss just 35 minutes ago when it comes to this Game 5 Wednesday night back in OKC?
Yeah, I think part of it for me is just like which kind of confidence that we saw tonight carries over kind of better into Game 5. I think when you look at Dante and Nikhil especially, and Jaden too for that matter, I mean, those three guys played absolutely unbelievable. But when you look at, SGA and Jalen Williams both having career playoff highs in the same game, combining for 74 points, and SGA I think had a career high of playoff assists with 10. I think it's just kind of what carries over better. Like, do those two stars just keep it rolling, or do the Wolves reserves keep playing really well and maybe create opportunities for the stars to kind of rise and steal one over there? So that's kind of where my mind is at. And I also just think, hey, if the Wolves can continue to shoot the ball the way that they have, I think that'll be really important for them as well, just because we've seen several times in this postseason that the Timberwolves have had several games in a row of really struggling to shoot it from three, but now 2 games in a row where the Timberwolves were 20 of 40 from three in Game 3, and tonight they were 18 of 41 for 44%. So I think if they can keep just keep making shots, I think hopefully they just got to value each possession a little bit more and hope that they get a better version of Julius Randle, especially. I trust Ant to be able to respond from the performance that he had tonight, but I think it's now just about Julius Randle for now the second time. It's been benched in the fourth quarter and has had just a really unfortunately timed stinker. But again, for those two guys to only take 20 shots, and it'd be okay if they had 20 shots and had like a 3-to-1 assist turnover ratio or something, or were creating a ton of good shots for those guys. But the fact that they shot as little shots, as few shots as they did, they made as few shots as they did, they played as inefficiently as they did, and they had more turnovers than assists collectively, was just a bummer. So that's just kind of a non-starter. I think if those two guys play better, then anything can happen. But if those two guys continue to struggle like they did tonight, then I think the series will end in Oklahoma City. But like I said, I don't think that this series is over quite yet. I think that the Wolves will hang tough in a really hostile environment, but I think that game's going to be pretty competitive and is going to go down to the wire, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I think the Timberwolves have outplayed the Thunder in both first halves in Oklahoma City, and certainly can draw upon some confidence there. I just think, again, it's how long do the Wolves want to hold on to the rope, right? The Wolves let go of the rope because they were frustrated with the officiating. They were frustrated with, maybe shots not falling, whatever you want to attribute it to in both those third quarters, and allowed Oklahoma City to go on a 10-0 run, 12-0 run, whatever the case is, to take it from a 1 or 2 possession game to a game that feels somewhat out of reach. And so I think if you can make Oklahoma City play from behind early, they're not a team that likes to play from behind. It's kind of like a football team that's great at just leaning on their defense and running the ball once they have a 2-score lead. I think the Thunder are kind of the same way in that they don't like to shoot a lot of threes and run and gun and shoot a ton of threes. They really like to slow it down a little bit and play more in the half court, and then really only run in transition off of turnovers or blocks. So yeah, I think if you can get an early lead and guys play with some confidence, then who knows?
Last one, 60 seconds. Let's get out of here. You text me if that was Nas last game as a Timberwolf in the Target Center. Boy, did that dude go out with a bang, right? 5 of 8 from 3, 23 points. I text you. My follow-up was like, dude, Nas is always good. I know he's last on the totem pole every time we talk about off-season talkers. He's the first one to go, but he always shows up. He did it versus Denver last year in the playoffs. He gives you 2 to 3 monster games come playoff time, and he did it tonight.
Yeah, and I think part of it on the defensive end of the floor helps with his comfortability, obviously going against his cousin in SGA. But yeah, I just think when Nikhil is playing as well as he is on the defensive end of the floor, it just feeds confidence on the offensive end of the floor. Mm-hmm. And I think the important thing for all these guys too on the bench was they all saw shots go down within the first minute or two that they were on the floor. And right, Nickeil makes his first three, and then it's just, all right, let's go from there. And I think the way that he was very aggressive, but played within himself, if that makes sense. I think he kind of understood when not to take shots and when to pass it, make the extra pass, try to get Nas a shot or Dante a shot, or set up a swing to get Ant or Julius a shot, or allow Jaden to attack off the catch, something like that. But, again, just played super within himself and provided a huge spark to even give the Timberwolves a chance to win this game. Again, we've talked about all the stats. Timberwolves won in almost every area in the stat sheet tonight, but that's a lot of it is attributed to Nickeil and the energy that he brought off the bench and kind of helped, I think, Dante and Jaden and some of those guys feed off of it in a really tangible way. And I think he was a super important cog. And the Timberwolves playing with some pace and really good lineups that they had, especially in that second half. So he can totally be an energy creator and a fire starter. And the Timberwolves will definitely need him to play with that confidence on the road if they want to end up having a game 6 here. I believe it would be Friday?
I think it would be Friday. Yeah, it's every other from here on out. It's every other. So, yeah, would be Friday. T-Wolves cough up 23 turnovers, and they lose by 2, 128-126. That's your final tonight in Game 4. They fall behind in the series 3-1. As always, though, huge shout-out to all you guys, all the everydayers out there. You guys always make us your first listen. All you guys coming in the chat with us from game to game, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Go follow Jack at JR Borman 13 live from the Target Center throughout the entire playoffs. We'll catch you for Game 5. That's Wednesday night, another 7:30 tip. But until then, signing out.